Coming up next, Mehl will talk about public code with free software. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry for the delay. I wanted to show a video. Never do that in presentations really, but I tried it. I'm stupid, sorry. So today I will be talking about public code with free software. And more or less about how we can secure our digital public infrastructure. But first of all, I have to admit, I'm a little bit strange here. I'm no developer, I'm no sysadmin, I'm no IT security expert. I'm a political science student or Finnish student. So I might be quite rare. But still I have a huge interest in what's going on in the IT. And I think it's even more important to work from a political perspective, because that's our society, that's the place we are living in, and that's what we have to hack as well. So I'm here to present you a way that we at the Free Software Foundation Europe, where I'm working at, found out how to make sure that we have control and that we have freedom in our society in the digital phase or digital area. Yeah, that's again an example why we are working on that, because we have policy failures everywhere. I mean, these are bugs that we have, and I will in the next few minutes talk about the bugs that we have in our sphere in the digital public infrastructure that we are living in our societies, and yeah, how we want to fix that. But first of all, a few words about the Free Software Foundation Europe I'm working at, if you don't know it. So we are a bunch of happy people spread all over Europe and across, and our mission is to empower people to control technology. So what does this control of technology mean? When speaking about that, I'd like to show a really simplified scheme, also from the political area, but I don't know whether you know it. This is how the US nuclear chain of command looks like for most people. So on the very top we have the elected president. No matter what his name is or her name is. Right now it's not the best name. But anyway, this guy, this girl has the power to fire off the nuclear missiles and bring freedom to the world. And yeah, we have elected president. He can press the red button and everything will go off. But no, there's something more. We should know, we do know that there's another entity that we have to have a look at. It's the engineer who installed the red button in the first place. So basically, of course, simplified, a very simple technology, a red button to fire off the nuclear missiles. But well, this engineer could have also modified it, could have made it invalid and not working, could have made it directed to somewhere else or whatever. So this shows in a very simplified way what power technology has on us. And we have technology everywhere, right? So we have this laptop, mobile phones, but perhaps some of you also came here using technology. Trains, buses, airplanes, a taxi, a car full of technology. And so who has the power over this kind of technology? Well, basically the software running on it, the thing giving controls to this technology. And how can we control this software? Well, I would say the only way is using free software. Free and open source software enables you to take over control over technology. And this will be nothing new for most of you, but let's just recap the basics of free software. So free software is the thing that gives you 4 basic freedoms, 4 elementary freedoms. First freedom is to use the software for any purpose. So no matter if you're doing this on your own, like privately using the software, or in your education sector, or you're a security researcher and want to use the software to analyze it, using it commercially, there's no boundaries. You can use the software for any purpose of free software. Second freedom is the freedom to study the software. I think that's the most common or the most known example for free software, or the most known freedom. You can have a look at the source code and nobody can hinder you to do it. You can see how it works and to understand it. The third freedom is the freedom to share software. So to give a copy of the software to a friend, to a colleague, to your company, and you can even say that it costs something. So price doesn't matter. The price doesn't make the software free or unfree. Yeah? So this is really important, that it's not about commercial software versus free software. This doesn't matter. And the last freedom is the freedom to improve software. So to make it better or to make it worse, nobody cares. It's about the freedom to modify the software and to also give away these modifications. So a software which disallows you to have at least one of these freedoms is not free software. So free software has to give you all those 4 freedoms, otherwise it's not free, it's a non-free software or proprietary software. That's how we call it. And to make this clear, free software is nothing different from open source, FOSS, FLOSS or Libre software, whatever. It's the same or it's different terms for the same set of software. All that matters is the freedoms that the software gives you. So how do we want to spread free software and how do we want to promote free software in Europe? Well, I would say there are roughly 3 pillars of our work. First of all, we do community work. So we are working together with people all over Europe, with people from the free software community and also other communities to represent users and developers and to give them a voice. So one part of that is what I'm doing right now. We are thinking of how to promote free software and we are talking to you guys and girls how to push forward with that and to also represent you. So also have your ideas and put them into some positive change. Another part sounds quite boring, but it's really important. It's the legal work, because free software is more or less all about licenses, because these are the things that give you the freedom to use and study, share, improve the software. So what we are doing here is that we are building a network of legal experts, of people knowing licensing stuff, people, lawyers, users, developers, but also people from larger corporations. We facilitate a safe platform for them to discuss legal issues, licensing issues, and to find ways how to make it easier to develop and share and reuse free software. And we have, of course, the policy work. So this is more or less typical advocacy work. So we are meeting with the political representatives, people from the public sector, trying to convince them of free software, why it's important for them. We are building networks together with other organizations in all over Europe, other free software communities, to push for a change for more free software, to make free software the default in our societies. So some just recent activities. For example, we have the free software FOSS for SMEs activity. That's an EU project in which we are working to have e-learning courses for people working in small and medium-sized enterprises, so that everybody can make these courses and learn about free software, how to use it, what's free software, what free and open source software is available, and to eventually also migrate to this set of software. So more or less directed to business users to also convince them of that. We are working on reuse. That's an initiative more on the legal side, in which we make it easier for developers, also guys like you, to make it easy to have your software reusable for other people. So this is a simple set of guidelines, human understandable, to make your software reusable. For example, include your license headers and so on. Then we have a clearly policy activity, that's Safe Code Share, which is the newest EU copyright proposal, which has been just in the media recently again, where there might be upload filters for code hosting platforms like GitHub, GitLab, and so on. And so we fought against that, and until now quite successfully. And for example, Free Your Android, in which we help people to regain control over their mobile devices. This morning there was a workshop by Albert, also from FSFE, who helped you and will help you to free your Android phones if you're interested in that. But before coming to the to the activity that gave this session its name, and to the, I would say, currently most interesting and most important activities that we have. I'd like to ask you some honesty, some questions. So please raise your hand if one of these questions applies to you. No worries, there's no shaming and blaming here. First questions. Do you finance the development of non-free software on a regular basis? Who of you does that? 1, 2, 3, okay, 4 or 5 people. Okay. Who of you who've raised their hands? Do you do that, are you forced to do that? Or do you do that on your, do you like to do that? Nobody? 1, okay. 2, okay, that's fine. And to everyone, do you pay taxes? Oh, come on, guys. So, I'm a really strong free software advocate. I love free software and I really dislike proprietary software. But I have to say, to be honest, I have to say yes to all of these 3 questions. I finance the development of non-free software on a regular basis. And I'm forced to do so by paying taxes. While I'm completely fine with people who finance non-free software, and if they like to do that, that's fine for me. It's their choice. And I'm also fine with paying taxes. But I'm really not fine with having to pay for proprietary software because I'm paying taxes. Why is that? Well, a lot of software, in the public sector especially, which I'm paying for by paying taxes, will result in proprietary software. So it's not only about licenses that are bought, like Microsoft licenses, Oracle databases, and so on. It's about the software that is newly developed. And this is, in most cases, proprietary software. And this is something which really bothers me. But this is nothing new. I mean, we had this issue for many years, since there is something like proprietary software. And we tried to tackle this by regional campaigns, by some counter campaigns against the city, migrating back to Windows or whatever. So, but only in small cases and really scattered all over the world. But I think with our latest initiative, we have found a way to tackle this globally and proactively. And it's really the right time to do that. It's called public money, public code, what we are doing. And the question is really simple behind that. Why is software created, taxpayers' money, not released as free software? Because, I mean, we paid for that, right? We pay for roads by our taxes, and we are allowed to drive on them. We pay for schools, and kids are allowed to go on these schools. We pay for software, but we are not allowed to use them freely. We are not allowed to study them. It's completely transparent in so many cases. And this is something we want to change. We want to make sure that if it is public money, it should be public code as well. Again, this is nothing revolutionary, but I think for the first time we found a way, and a positive, proactive way, how to tackle that. And how to push for a political change here, and also for a change in society. And the good thing is, we are not alone. We started this campaign roughly 1 year ago, and meanwhile we are more than 18,000 people and 150 organizations who've signed our open letter for that. And this is not only small organizations, these are really global players, but also many local hacker spaces and so on. So this is really great. This is a broad initiative from all over the world, people supporting this claim. Now I wanted to show a video. Is it working now? Would you think so? Okay, let's try.
Government would treat our public infrastructure like our streets and public buildings.
Yes, I will restart. So this is a short video which we created. It's only 3.5 minutes. And I think it summarizes the claims very well.
Government would treat our public infrastructure like our streets and public buildings, the same way it treats our digital infrastructure. Our members of parliament would work in a rented space where they weren't allowed to vote in favour of stricter environmental laws because the owner, a multinational corporation, didn't allow that kind of voting in its buildings. nor will it allow a long overdue upgrade to more than 500 seats. This means some members of Parliament have to stay outside in the street. And a couple of blocks away, a brand new gym is already being torn down just 6 months after it was built. It's being replaced with an exact replica at great expense. And the only difference, the new manufacturer also provides streetball as an added feature. Meanwhile, every night through a hidden back door in the City Hall, documents that contain sensitive information on citizens, from bank data to healthcare records, are being stolen. But no one is allowed to do anything about it, because searching for back doors and locking them would infringe the signed user agreement. And as absurd as this sounds, when it comes to our digital infrastructure, things like the software and programs that our governments are using every day, this comparison is pretty accurate. Because mostly our administrations procure proprietary software. This means a lot of money goes into licenses that last for a limited amount of time and restrict our rights. We aren't allowed to use our infrastructure in a reasonable way. And because the source code of proprietary software is usually a business secret, finding security holes or deliberately installed backdoors is extremely difficult and illegal. But our public administrations can do better. If all publicly financed software were to be free and open source, we could use and share our infrastructure for anything and for as long as we wanted. We could upgrade it, repair it, and remodel it in any way to fit our needs. And because the open source in free software means that the blueprint is openly readable for everyone, this makes it much easier to find and close security holes. And if something practical and reliable was created digitally, not only can you reuse the blueprint all over your country, but the actual thing itself can be deployed anywhere, even internationally. A great example of this is Fix My Street. Originally developed in Great Britain as a free software app to report, view and discuss local problems like potholes, it's now being used all over the world. Everyone benefits because new features and improvements are shared by everyone. If all our software were developed like this, we could stop struggling with restrictive licenses and could start thinking about where and how software could help us. We could concentrate on creating a better society for everyone. So, if you think that tomorrow's infrastructure should be in our own hands, help us now by sharing this video and visiting our website, publiccode.eu. It's time to make our demand. Public money, public code.
So, thanks for watching. I hope you liked it. Whoops, what is this here doing? Okay, Ooh, it worked, wow. So, yes, I think it summarized quite well what we are planning to do with public money, public code, and what we are already doing, but I want to dive a little bit deeper and emphasize a few points. So, I think there are 4 main reasons for public code, which you, if you're speaking together with colleagues or also your political representatives, could bring up. So one thing is, it can save taxes. So while free software itself doesn't have to be free, and of course you have to add maintenance and support and development and so on, so it's not for free. But it can save a huge amount of taxes because people can work together and similar applications for the same set of problems don't have to be programmed from scratch every time. We have the bonus of collaboration. So multiple public administrations, governments, cities can work together on the same application to solve their issues. And they can share expertise, risk and costs in order to do that. We have huge security improvements and benefits of that. So free software can be analyzed, the source code can be read, and it's transparent software, so you can see who adds which kind of line of code and how it works. So you can also have independent security audits. And last but not least, it can also be a huge driver for innovation. Others don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you can also, you can take a software and just add a few features to it if you need it, and then you're good, and you spend less money on that to get a little bit further with solving the issues. Well, everything really sounds good, right? So this is great, this is awesome. But the thing is, when we spoke with people from public administrations, public sector, with mayors, with civil servants, they'll say, well, sounds good, but, and here comes the top 5 of myth about public code and free software that we hear. The one thing is, well, sounds good, but there's no professional support for free software products. Really? Kidding me? Ever heard of Red Hat, perhaps? So there are companies specializing on free software. It's only the license and the freedoms that ship with the software. So it doesn't have an effect on the professional support. It's about the companies providing support. So find a good company providing support for a public sector and you're good. So this is a common misunderstanding. Next thing is, well, thank you, but free software is not user-friendly. Again, free software is not a different software. So, of course, it has 4 freedoms attached to it, minimum. But it can be user-friendly. So, the days when free software was just only made by amateurs, they are long gone. So we have software like on cloud services and so on, which are, well, not user-friendly, but they're the best software that you can get for what you need. So again, this is about the money that you spend for the software, not about the license that's attached to it. Another thing is, again, free software will not be compatible with our proprietary software. This is also nonsense. I mean, you can install a Firefox on a Windows, on an Apple computer, so there's no incompatibilities only due to the license of the software. And my personal favorite, dude, making your source code public will cause security risks. And this is a really common thing that you hear from people in the public sector who have no idea about security, but they know this phrase. But we all should know, if you rely on security on obscurity, you're really gonna have a bad time. And this is what we have to bring into the heads of the people procuring software. And last but not least, well, this free software, it's a nerd thing. It's made by amateurs, by people just quitting school and working in their GitHub bubbles. That's also a common misunderstanding. But I can show you a few examples of where free software in public administrations has long crossed the border of amateur and is now really professional and widely used. One of the best examples in public sector is Barcelona. That's the second largest city in Spain, and they have a really good initiative running there. So first of all, they signed the open letter that we have, which is really great for public administration. And they've started with a really simple number. They said that 70% of their annual IT budget, so the budget for spending on creating software, is to go to free software. So 70% of the money should flow into free software. Well, we have similar cases where governments said that, but they supported it by real action. So they had a good and extensive set of guidelines and policies that they've implemented in their public administration. So you can also have a look at them. They are public and mostly English. So a lot of guidelines how any civil servant who does procure free software, or software at all, can procure free software. So there's anything about licenses and how to do that, how to write that in the contracts and which clauses to use to make software which is developed by public money will be public code in the end. So this is really great. And this is also, as I said, adaptable to other cities because it's English, it's published, and yeah. Another example is, this is a map our team compiled. It's only showing 4 more or less known softwares in the public sectors which are free software. This is X-Road, CCAN, GNU Health, and Consul. Really, they're for us end users, they are not really interesting, but for public administrations, they're quite useful. For example, Consul is a software to to have participation running, so that people can decide over the budget of the city, or can say or vote whether they want to have a playground in their area and something like that. So quite useful. This and other softwares is used all over the world. So on different continents, different countries, in different languages, and it's all free software, and it's all only developed and driven forward by public administrations, so by mostly cities, larger and smaller ones. So this is really great, and this is already happening. So public money, public code is not a dreamland fantasy, it's already reality. And I think it's really important, since we're here now in the Balkan area, so really developing region, I think it's even more important for them to now understand the principles of public code. Because you have a lot of issues. You have high license costs, which are really expensive for them. You have different software solutions for similar problems. So many countries here, many regions, they speak the same language, they have the same problem. Of course, you have this everywhere in the world, but here especially. And so why do you have to develop the same or different applications for the same, to solve the same problems? That really doesn't make sense to me. Then you have the huge issue of vendor lock-in. Well, you have this everywhere, but I think here in developing regions, it's especially hard. That means that if you have a software which you have to renew the license for, that you often cannot just switch to another software because of closed standards, so standards, document formats that you cannot just transfer to a new software, and other things. So you have contracts that you cannot get rid of. And this is a huge issue for public administrations, because in the short term, when they see, oh, we have to buy new licenses, they see that, okay, let's just pay for another 3 years of licenses and not switch the whole software to another one which might be better or cheaper or whatever. So this vendor lock-in is a huge issue. And I think the earlier you start to switch over to free and open source software, the better. Another thing is the lack of regional support and development. So a lot of software which is developed is not developed by regional or national providers, but somewhere abroad, or just bought software from somewhere else, and the support that you get is not from the region, but from a different state or even a different continent. So this also does not make really much sense. Instead, I think developing regions have to share knowledge, money, and risks by cooperation. And this is only possible by free and open source software. And they should also promote regional providers to foster the regional economy also, to give contracts to those companies, to also smaller companies. I will go quickly over what we understand now in the bigger scope of public infrastructure and digital infrastructure. I mean, it's what you came here with today, probably a train, a bus, whatever. This is one example for public infrastructure. You have a lot of other ones, like education, security service, so police, data storage and processing, geographical analysis, participation platforms, communication and information. So these are infrastructures that you had in the past 100, 200 years already. So the analog infrastructure. But you have the same set of areas also in the digital age. So for example, you also do participation online now. You have to provide security online, education, so schools can go more and more into the internet. So you have the same set of areas where you have to get active, where governments have to get active, but only in the digital age now. But the thing how public administrations are trying to solve that is often with proprietary software, and this creates a lot of issues. We spoke a lot about them already. So no interoperability, so that one department cannot speak to the software of the other department. Vendor lock-in, we have a low acceptance, so people cannot understand how the money that they're paid for software, where it's directed to and what it's creating. We have no local investments, and of course the security concern. But public code can solve a lot of these issues. So we have open standards, we have independence thanks to the open licensing, we have transparency, we can include regional providers, and we have auditable code. So something that's transparent and that's understandable. So in the past year when we had this campaign, and also in the years before that when we did the same, but of course not under this label, we found out or we learned a few lessons, and I want to share them with you. So if you want to do that on your own or with your own organization here, or if you want to speak to political representatives or whoever, I can give you a few hints that we've learned ourselves the hard way. First of all, public administrations and also our communication should try to improve procurement. I think that's the first step. So we have to enable smaller regional providers to participate in tenders. This is one of the most important things. Policies are more important than laws. For example, we have in Italy, we have a great law. It's a state law, I think Article 68 or 69. This is basically public money, public code, what they're writing down there. It's awesome. They say all money that's flowing into the development of software has to result in free and open source software. That's great. But what's happening? Nothing. Because there are no policies, there are no guidelines for people in cities, in smaller governments, for civil servants to actually procure free software. They have no idea how to do that. They sometimes don't even know about the law. So what we have to focus on and what we have to promote is policies and guidelines. So these are closer to the actual aim, so the people doing these tenders, and they're easier to implement than a law. We have to foster a knowledge transfer, so to help people to understand each other. So if you have people in the IT department who understand free and open source software, I can pretty much guarantee you that the legal department doesn't understand about free and open source software. So this is something we should work on, and a cultural change. So that's, I think, one of the most important ones. That people in public sector who just learned to spell the word digital now also understand the way how software is developed, how software works, what IT security is, because for most of them, or for many of them, IT security is installing a virus scanner, a malware scanner. That's all they know about IT security. And we have to teach them about that. So this is really important. We should not only stay in our bubble and talk with our friends who also understand what we're talking about, but leave our comfort zone and also try to help them to understand it. Because otherwise, proprietary software vendors will do. So, if you're asking now, what can I do? I'm just a hacker. I've no organization behind me. What can I do? I think there are a few simple steps. Of course, a lot more, but this is something you could do. The easiest way is to just sign the open letter. So we have this open letter on Public Code EU. So just sign it. If you have your hackerspace or another kind of organization you're working for, convince them to also sign the open letter. It's not much, but you can give us a voice. You can raise your voice. So we can go to political representatives, to people from public administrations, to tell them, look how many people care about that. A second step could be to spread the word. So to speak with your friends, your colleagues, if you know someone from your city council or whoever, just speak to them. Ask them, what's the status of software in my city I'm living in? And you can tell them about public code. You can also download, for example, if you order for free a few stickers, posters, postcards, and whatever we have on public money, public code from our website. So you can also use that to convince people. And the third step could be to support us otherwise. So we have this website. You can contribute translations. There are only a few translations from Eastern Europe there. That's a shame. So if you're interested in that, help us with that. Our website has an issue tracker. You can help there and improve it to make it more attractive for people to browse the information. Or you can become part of the FSFE's supporter base. So also help us financially to proceed with this fight for free software. And all of this is just the beginning, what I'm telling you about now. So in this year, we have the website in 18 languages, video in 6 languages that you saw, video subtitles so people can understand what's going on there. We have stickers, posters, postcards, and so on. What we are working on still is interviews with stakeholders. So we have released a few interviews, for example, with Francesca Pria. She's CTO of Barcelona, and this is a really good interview about how she implemented public money, public code in Barcelona, mostly on her own and also in collaboration with other people. So this is really interesting. We are trying to conduct more to understand how public money, public code is already used somewhere in Europe or across Europe, and what we can learn from that. We are currently in the final steps of creating a brochure for decision makers. This sounds really boring, but this is really important, because if we speak to people, if you speak to your political representatives, they will say, oh, okay, good, free software, open source, sounds good, give me more information, and you have nothing. You can show them a few links, but that's not enough. So we are trying to get a brochure, so a bundle of texts about what free software is, obviously, but also what the benefits for public administrations are, and a few of other things. So trying to get rid of misconceptions, trying to make them understandable how free software fosters IT security in their area and their way of thinking, and we're trying to do that in their language. So this is really important, and this will also be released, so you can get it for free or just download the PDF. And another thing we are working on is a directory map of public code. So something like, remember the map that I've shown? Something like that, just in a bigger scale. So we want to map free software, open source software that has already been created by public administrations, and to map this where it is used worldwide. And we are currently in the phase of gathering all the data and so on, and I can tell you, it's huge. It's larger than I imagined. There's a lot of free and open source software developed by public administrations, but we just have to make it visible to show that this is not some edge case, not some dreamland, but this is already reality. And to make sure that we can add more points to this map and to this directory. But yes, to be honest, that's only a small part of what's needed. This is a cool campaign, a cool activity. We are doing a lot of good stuff, and we're trying to do that many years more. But this is only a small part, just a puzzle piece. But I think if we work together, if the NGOs or the organizations, the hackerspaces, the people you know, if we work together with that and use the idea of public money, public code, we can make it possible to turn public money to public code. That would be great. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, please.
You're facing a tough road ahead.
We do, yeah.
Because how do you
It's working.
How do you think you can achieve the lawmakers and decision makers, first of all, to understand what you are trying to do? Because we here, we do understand this, but they don't really. And second of all, you are implying on their good intentions, like saving tax money and offering better services. Unfortunately, not all politicians have these good intentions. You know, I mean, sometimes they want to spend more money in order that money gets into their pockets. The difference is obvious in Barcelona. When you get the good people sitting in the city hall and making decisions, then you get good decisions. But you can also have a reversal, like in Munich. Mm-hmm. It's the same on the European level. You know, in the European Parliament, just a few people really understand what's all about there, and in administration also, and especially the commissioners. So I don't know how to cope with it. You know, it all starts in the school benches at the universities, using the software, teaching people what it is, teaching them also the basics of law and licenses. it continues through the economy and through the companies which are using the software, producing that, not contributing back to the community, and it ends in the politics. So unfortunately, I would like to see all of this realized and more. Unfortunately, I see without radical changes on all three fronts, I'm not sure whether something will happen to it. But I'm ready to sign the open letter, and let's see if I get fired.
Cool, thanks. So I can agree to all of what you said. So of course we have these issues. We have corruption, we have people who don't want to understand the principles of free and open source software. That's sure, that's the reality. But that's the same thinking that we had 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And we said, okay, our enemy is so huge we cannot ever fight it. But you have to have a look at where we are right now. So free and open source software is dominating the server market. It's just made possible that some companies like Google and Amazon exist. Of course, they are not good companies, but they're seeing the potential of free and open source software. That's where we are now. I mean, Linux is on so many servers right now. So this is just an example. And I think in the political area, we've also made a huge progress. Of course, there are drawbacks. There are things that happened like in Munich, but we have to learn from that. So I think we have good people everywhere. We have people also in the Commission, which we are working together with closely and who understand our points. But what we have to do is to empower them. And this is what we are doing here. We are not going there individually and knocking on their doors and saying, hey, by the way, could you also do free software, please? Thanks. So we're trying to leverage this on the global level now. We're trying to increase the pressure that we can put on them. And I think something like the brochure will also be a huge factor for that, to finally have a more or less policy document in their language explaining what's happening here. Of course, it's a long road, but I think we've learned a lot of things in the past years. For example, you said Munich. I think that's a great example. I don't know, many of you might not be aware of that, I think. So what happened in Munich, a large German city, is the city migrated to GNU Linux under the past mayor. And this was huge. Like, they made a Linux client and went big in press, and also, I think, don't know anymore who was it. Was it Ballmer, who also visited the mayor of Munich, sat in his car and said like, hey, come on, we make a special deal for you to use Windows again. So this was huge. But with a new mayor, they migrated back to Windows. This is bad, but this is also part of how we handled this a little bit wrongly. Like, we took Munich, at least in Germany, we took it as a lighthouse. So we said, this is where you have to go to, like, this is the ideal. But in fact, it was not. So the problem that we had in Munich was that we concentrated only on the operating system. So, and that's also the communication we had to many other public administrations. We said, well, first step is, you have to switch from Windows to Linux. If you think about it, that's not the right approach. Because then you have a free operating system, but you have a lot of proprietary software that's not compatible with Linux systems. And then the problems begin. And then in the end, Linux free software is the scapegoat, the one you can put all the blame on. Instead, what we're trying to do here is to make small steps, to free one application, one thing at a time, to make sure that all newly developed software is going to be free and open source software. And this will take a long time, I'm sure about that. But I think as soon as we have a huge set of software which is already free and open source software, then it's much simpler to switch the operating system in the end. And I think with that, what we've learned here in the past years, and with this approach, I think it's easier for politicians and for also people in the civil authorities to understand what we are trying to do, and to understand that this is important because they feel the pressure, they feel the vendor lock-in. 2 weeks ago, I've been to a conference there were mostly people from public administrations, mostly from the western part of Germany. They were all saying the same. They were saying, okay, well, the costs are driving us insane. We don't have control over it anymore. So they were already detecting the problems. 5 years ago, this wouldn't have been the case, I think. So I think this is now the right time to push for that. But of course, I admit it, that will be a long road, definitely, but we have to start it now. Question answered? Well, in general, I will be here until Sunday, so feel free to approach me later. Other questions? Great, then thanks a lot.